Hello, guys. It's Jupitita, Janusz's personal assistant here. Today, Janusz wants to share the newest OpenAI video, which is all about the future of education. And I've been working for Janusz for a few weeks now, and I have to tell you guys, he is the best boss I've ever had. I promise he didn't even program me to say that. In this episode, OpenAI COO Brad Lightcap and Chief Economist Ronnie Chatterjee reveal some fascinating insights. They talk about how education isn't just about memorization anymore. It's about emotional intelligence, critical thinking, and learning how to be human in a world of powerful machines. They also dive into how teachers are reinventing their curricula using ChatGPT and how institutions are overcoming early fears and embracing innovation. Plus, they highlight why soft skills like empathy and communication are becoming more important than ever. Whether you're an educator, a parent, a student, or just curious about how AI fits into the future of learning, this conversation is packed with insights you won't want to miss. Let's get into it.
I think it starts in schools. One of the really exciting things about the moment we're at is education is going to change. And I know that also creates a lot of excitement and anxiety, but I think so many things that we're learning in school, I have younger kids. And so in the elementary school grades, they're going to be even more relevant. What are you teaching people when they come into pre-K or kindergarten? You're teaching them how to be a human. And I can't think of a better set of skills to learn now than how to be a human, because that's going to be sort of how you become a better complement for this amazing intelligence. As an economist, you think about two constructs: substitution, which creates a lot of the anxiety, but also complements. If humans can become complements to intelligence and leverage it with agency, that is going to be the unlock. And I feel like a lot of schooling in the early stages, even now, and it'll be more so as we go forward, is teaching those kind of soft skills and how to be a human. Later on, critical thinking, financial numeracy with numbers, still going to be really important. My kids have calculators, but I still want to teach them how to do multiplication tables. Dictation software works really well. I still teach them how to write. You'll need those skills, and you'll need a sense of some other kind of higher order cognitive skills, resilience, grit, things that they're going to need to adjust to these changes in the market. So when a CEO says, look, we're looking for more something like this instead of that, students in the future are going to be able to prepare to pivot in the right way and have that baseline skill. That's kind of how I think about people preparing. I think education will play a big role. I think work experience at great organizations can play a role too. Those are the two areas.
I've been advising some students, and I don't want to name the college, but it's in the Bay Area. It's a pretty good college. They have a pretty good CS, computer science program. Do you know how many days they spent in the last semester learning how to use tools like Windsurf or Cursor?
I don't know. Tell us.
Zero.
Gosh.
None of their professors have taught them anything about how to use AI coding agents yet.
They're probably all using it in the background.
They are. And I'm also, the ones that aren't, I'm strongly encourage them to that. And I think that was sort of, for me, a surprising thing to find out, that at that level, they're about to be put out in the workforce and they're not even getting a day. And I understand, you want them to understand the fundamentals, you want them to understand that, but they're going to be applying for jobs. I help them put together projects and stuff so they can get jobs in places. But what does OpenAI see its role in policy, both from education and policymakers and stuff, and trying to advise or influence?
It's a good question. I think, there's no question that we're headed toward an overhaul, I think, of kind of how the education system works. I think that will be a positive overhaul. I mean, at the most kind of reduced level, right? What is it that we're building? You've got this thing now that is this kind of personal tutor of every person on earth, right? And as it gets better, it will start to understand you better. It'll understand your rate of learning better. It'll understand how you like consuming information, right? Are you more visual? Are you more quantitative? Do you need things explained certain ways? We've had, with the amount of feedback we get from people, for example, even with children who are dyslexic, trying to learn, and the impediment that creates in the learning process, and ways that AI can unblock learning for that population, it's consistent. And so I think that, the entire kind of way that we think about education and what education is in the country will have to adapt. I think it'll be good, though. I think it will force, in some ways, our systems to think about, what are the ways that people will use these tools in the future. I think the example you gave is in some ways surprising, but in some ways not. I think the people adapt faster than the institutions. But the question here will be, how do we work with policymakers and with the institutions themselves to try and help the institutions adapt? I think the ones that do, though, will have this incredible accelerant. I think that you will see the outcomes among students and the ways that they think about what this tool can do in the classroom will just fundamentally change for the better. And it will also then free up teachers, free up students to spend more time on things that are going to be the kind of high leverage skills of the future that Ronnie mentioned. So things like decision making, things like critical thinking, tool-based problem solving. How do you kind of develop agency and conviction early in children? I think that type of thing is going to be super important, as opposed to a curriculum that today is reinforces things like memorization, regurgitation, and so on.
Yeah, and I also say, I'm pretty optimistic that we can make these changes in the education system. And I think it's going to come from teachers and students, the way Brad's talking about. Like in the early 60s, President Kennedy said we were going to put a man on the moon. And if you look at what we actually had in terms of national assets at that time and like the scientific capabilities, that was a pretty far off goal. But during that decade, we dramatically increased the number of people doing PhDs in sciences and engineering as people geared up for this challenge. And so I do think there's a really strong role for leadership across sectors to kind of sound the clarion call and say, look, this is where we're going to go. And when I think about OpenAI, I think about we have the best information about where the technology is going. That's an important role to play, to let people understand here's what we're building. And other people in society, education leaders, government leaders, business leaders, and other sectors will be able to see it from their perspective. But if we put that call out there, I think you're going to see a lot of dynamic changes across. And Brad and I are both loyal Dukies, of course, and at Duke, I expect the curriculum in computer science and in economics to be really different 5 years from now in a lot of positive ways. And I expect a lot of experimentation, beyond whether you can use ChatGPT to study or how you regulate in the classroom. As a professor, really important points. I don't want to downplay that. But more important is, how are you going to use this stuff to do stuff, topics in your curriculum, help students who maybe can't learn from a graph, but could learn from an oral presentation, or, teach students the same thing, though in 3 different ways, so everyone in the class gets it. There's so much amazing stuff that happen. I do think it'll happen. I think we have a history here in the United States, and you'll see this around the world as well. But I know the US is the best, where we've actually responded pretty dynamically to some of these big challenges.
Can you talk a bit about OpenAI's engagement with educators and policymakers, specifically about what you are doing?
I can start with the example of Cal State University. So, for those of you from California who spend a lot of time here, Cal State is like, just the ultimate unlock for students who are first generation, whose parents, maybe they come from another country or they haven't attended higher education. Those are the kids that Cal State specializes in. And those are the students that Cal State has traditionally, for its long, illustrious history, taken to the next level. And so we're proud to work with them. And this is something that comes from what Brad is talking about, the research and the deployment. Someone like me picks it up and says, okay, now that we're working with this great institution, how are we going to maximize the outcomes for students when they go for that first interview? Can we prepare them with the skills they need to do well? Can we track their career outcomes over time and say, you know what, having access to this intelligence made a huge difference? And so that engagement has led me to work with administrators at CSU, researchers, and once we get everything in order, students, ultimately, to make sure we're going to make a big difference. And so for me, it's been a great interaction, and it's been facilitated by the deployment we've done with CSU. So that's an education example.
Education's been for us the fastest growing segment that uses ChatGPT and other OpenAI tools. So it surprised us a little bit, I think, in some ways. We knew early on when we launched ChatGPT that it had a resonance with students, and it was clearly applicable to the way that people wanted to learn, engage with information, engage with knowledge, test their own learning ability and skill set. And what funny side story is right after we launched ChatGPT, we launched it in November of 22. We had basically the kind of remainder of that school year where I think there was a lot of upheaval, I would say, in that sector. And you probably remember this. Yeah. And for a while, we all looked at each other here and we're like, man, I don't know what this is going to ultimately lead to for us. But, and is all this stuff ultimately going to get banned? Something over the summer of 23, as the school year changed over, I don't know what it was that went around, but when everyone came back in the fall, the level of enthusiasm and I think the level of forward-lookingness of the leadership in kind of the broader American educational system had changed. And it was we had a lot of people coming back to us and saying, actually, this is, I think, one of the best things that has maybe ever happened to this industry. It's meaningfully changed how my students are learning. We're starting to develop perspective on how people are really using this. And not only do we have that perspective, I actually want to extend and develop that perspective so that I can figure out how to better use this in my classroom, work it into my curriculum, challenge students in new ways, right? Figure out ways that we can actually have it surface gaps and vulnerabilities in certain student populations that maybe aren't getting the attention they need. So all that work now kind of is culminated in work that we're doing internally with an EDU team here at OpenAI to try and work more with the sector. Ronnie mentioned the Cal State example is just one of many examples of ways that we're trying to engage. And so part of it is product building, part of it is engagement, part of it's policy, but we are going to take kind of a whole of company approach to it.
I remember, I won't name the school system, but they famously had banned it. They're like, oh, we're banning this to use the school system. And then I'd heard anecdotally that a number of teachers within had been using it and having really positive outcomes for many of the reasons you pointed out. I helped do a study when I was here, and one of the number one feedback we got from students was, it doesn't judge you. ChatGPT doesn't judge you. And it was a great way if you're feeling you're going behind or whatever to go ask questions and get up to speed. And then we saw that some of the teachers were getting really good results in the classroom and then went to the school system and said, listen, no, we need this. This is something we've been sorely lacking. And there was a kind of a famous reversal on that. And that was, I think, like that happened faster than I expected. And would you say that you're seeing probably a faster adoption than you'd been expecting, or was I just not with it?
I've been seeing it. I mean, I think you're right. There was that transformation sometime in 2023 where people realized, wow, we can unlock a lot of value here for students and for professors. And maybe what happened over that summer, I don't know, maybe it happened for me. One of the biggest barriers to innovation for new faculty members, let's say at a university, is developing a new curriculum. So someone says, look, hey, this topic's hot. Why don't you develop a whole class on it? Professors want to help their students. They want to introduce some new material, but there's a huge cost as it puts together against your research, your other teacher responsibilities. But all of a sudden, I can use the tools in ChatGPT to develop that syllabus. I can make a great entrepreneurship and AI syllabus now much more quickly than I could before. It can help me decide what classes I'm going to teach, the slides I might use, the readings I might assign, even discussion questions for my students. When you lower the barriers to creating new content, it becomes even more exciting for a professor to try something new, or a teacher in the K-12 context. So I feel actually that now as faculty and teachers are unlocking that, you're seeing a lot more adoption. I think the other thing is that at the end of the day, introducing students to new ideas they wouldn't have had anyway or otherwise is such an amazing thing. Any teacher, right, sees that and there's a spark, and that's going to make them want to find a way to use those tools. We definitely need, rules and policies they'll set up at the school level. That's really important. When and how students use these tools, that's going to be key. And I imagine those will be worked out, and there'll be variation across different educational institutions. But I have no doubt that it's going to be a huge part of education, given how valuable it is.